Rain had fallen earlier that night, leaving the city soaked and glimmering under streetlights. Mason Hale gripped the steering wheel loosely as he drove through the quiet roads, his mind far from where he was headed. The hum of the engine and the steady rhythm of the wipers did nothing to drown out the image that had rooted itself in his thoughts. The girl from the Harlow mansion. He hadn't even meant to notice her at first. The dinner had been tedious, the kind of evening where laughter sounded rehearsed and everyone's smiles were measured. But then, in the middle of all that polished perfection, she'd walked in. A young woman with quiet eyes and the stillness of someone who had learned to shrink herself to survive. Her name, he later heard, was Clara. He'd watched her flinch when Verena Harlow snapped at her for spilling a drop of wine. He remembered how she whispered an apology so soft it was almost painful to hear. And he couldn't forget the way she didn't even look up. That kind of silence had weight. It wasn't humility, it was defeat. Hours later, Mason found himself at a quiet bar on 5th Street, a familiar refuge after nights that left him questioning humanity. Ethan, his longtime friend, was already there, sitting with a glass of whiskey and a knowing smirk. "You look like someone just told you kindness was illegal," Ethan said, sliding him a drink. Mason gave a tired chuckle. "Dinner with the Harlows. Ah, that explains it. How many smiles before you wanted to run?" "3," Mason said flatly. "And 1 insult before the appetizers even arrived." Ethan laughed. "Claudia's still trying to flirt her way into your inheritance." Mason exhaled. "I wish it were just her. The whole house reeks of entitlement." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "But that's not what's bothering you, is it?" Mason hesitated, then shook his head. "No. It's the girl who works for them. Clara." "The maid?" Ethan asked, surprised. "What about her?" "She looked terrified the entire night, like she was walking on broken glass." Mason leaned forward, his tone low. "I've seen fear before, but not like that. She didn't make eye contact with anyone. And when Verena scolded her, she didn't even flinch, just apologized and kept moving." Ethan studied him quietly. "Maybe she's just shy." Mason's gaze darkened. That wasn't shyness. That was conditioning. The words hung between them. Ethan knew that tone. It was the same voice Mason used when something clawed at his conscience and wouldn't let go. "Don't do this to yourself again," Ethan said finally. "You can't save every lost soul you meet." "I'm not trying to save her," Mason said softly. "I just can't shake the feeling that she's living through something she doesn't deserve." Ethan sighed. "You always do this. You see something broken and you want to fix it." "Maybe," Mason murmured, "because I know what it feels like to break and have no one notice." Ethan went quiet. Mason rarely spoke like that, rarely let anyone glimpse the loneliness underneath all his composure. "Then what are you going to do?" Ethan asked quietly. "I don't know," Mason admitted, "but I can't just forget her." He took a slow sip of whiskey, eyes lost in thought. "You should have seen her, Ethan. It's like she doesn't even believe she belongs in the same world as the people she serves." Ethan tapped his glass against Mason's. "You always did have a soft spot for the ones the world overlooks." "Maybe the world would be better if more people did," Mason said quietly. They talked until the rain stopped, until laughter from the other end of the bar faded into background noise. And even then, Mason's thoughts never left Clara, the trembling in her hands, the silence in her eyes. 3 nights later, Mason attended a charity art gala. It was another polished event full of champagne and hypocrisy, but duty came first. He was making his rounds when he spotted a familiar face, Elena Harlow, Verena's younger daughter. She stood near a painting, hands clasped tightly, clearly uncomfortable in the crowd. Mason approached slowly. "Elena," he greeted with a warm smile. "Didn't expect to see you here." She turned, startled, then softened. "Mr. Hale." "I could say the same." "Please," he said, "call me Mason. Mr. Hale makes me sound like my father." That drew a quiet laugh from her, the kind that sounded like it hadn't had a reason to come out in a while. "I'm not usually here. Mother insisted I attend." "Let me guess," Mason said, leaning slightly closer. "For appearances?" "Always for appearances," she said, rolling her eyes faintly. In her house, everything is about how it looks, not how it feels. Mason tilted his head. That sounds exhausting. You have no idea. There was a brief silence, the kind that felt heavy but safe. Then Mason said softly, "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "The girl who works for your family.
Clara.
How long has she been with you?"
Elena hesitated.
Her smile faltered, and for a moment, she just stared at her glass. "Why do you ask?" "Because she looked," he paused, searching for the right word. "Trapped." Elena sighed, lowering her gaze. "She's been with us since she was little. My mom, she took her in, said it was an act of charity." "Charity," Mason repeated. "That's not what it looked like." Elena's voice softened. "It's complicated. My mom doesn't see her as family. She reminds Clara every day that she's lucky to even have a roof over her head." Mason's expression hardened. "That's not luck. That's cruelty dressed as kindness." Elena looked at him carefully. "You really care about her, don't you?" "I don't even know her," Mason said. "But I know the look in her eyes. It's the kind people get when they've been silenced too long." Something shifted in Elena's face. Empathy, maybe. Or shame. "I wish I had your courage," she said quietly. "I see how she's treated, but I never speak up. I'm afraid of my mother's wrath." "Then maybe you can do something small," Mason said gently. "Something that doesn't draw attention, but still makes a difference." Elena frowned slightly. "Like what?" "Get her a phone. Something simple. So she has a way to reach someone if she ever needs to." Elena's eyes widened. "That's dangerous. If my aunt finds out." "She won't," Mason interrupted softly. "You're careful. I can tell." Elena looked at him for a long time. His tone wasn't commanding, it was quiet, earnest, the kind of voice people instinctively trusted. Finally, she whispered, "All right, I'll do it." Mason smiled, relief flickering across his face. "Thank you." But Elena didn't move immediately. She looked at him, studying him with an intensity that surprised even her. "You don't talk like the other men I know," she said softly. "Is that good or bad?" "It's unsettling," she admitted. "You actually listen." Mason's smile faded slightly. "Listening's easy when someone's honest. And when they're not, then you listen harder." The words hung in the air between them, unspoken tension shimmering just beneath the surface. "Mason," Elena said after a pause, her voice quieter now. "Why her? You could have anyone in that room tonight. Women who'd kill for your attention. Why care about a girl like Clara?" He looked away for a moment, then back at her with eyes that carried too much truth. "Because sometimes the ones who speak the least have the loudest stories." Elena didn't answer. She only nodded, as if she understood something she couldn't put into words. That night, Clara sat alone in her small attic room, sewing a loose button back onto her worn dress. The sound of rain against the window was the only comfort she knew. When she heard the soft knock on the door, she froze. "Elena," she whispered. Elena stepped inside quickly, closing the door behind her. "Clara, I brought you something." Clara blinked. "What is it?" Elena handed her a small box. "Just open it." Inside lay a phone, simple, small, new. Clara gasped. "Elena, I can't accept this." "You can," Elena said firmly. "And you will. Keep it hidden. Use it when you need to." Clara's eyes filled. "If your mom finds it." "She won't," Elena said. "It's from someone who wants you to have a voice again." Clara stared at her, confused. "Who?" Elena hesitated, then smiled faintly.
Mason Hale.
The name hit her like a whisper in the dark. Why would he? Elena placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Because he sees what others refuse to." "Don't ask why, Clara, just accept that someone finally does." That night, Clara sat for a long time, staring at the phone before finally turning it on. A single message glowed on the screen. "Mason, you don't have to answer. I just wanted you to know someone out there sees you." Her breath trembled. Her fingers hovered, then typed slowly. "Clara, why would you care? You barely know me. It took a minute before his reply appeared. Mason. Because sometimes, when the world forgets someone, it takes just one person to remind them they still exist. She covered her mouth as tears slipped down her cheeks. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. And Mason, somewhere miles away, sat staring at his phone, knowing he had just crossed a line he couldn't step back from. Inside her small room, Clara sat on the edge of her narrow bed, the cracked ceiling above catching the weak flicker of the bulb. Her heart was both full and frightened. Mason's words had taken root in her, soft, unforgettable, dangerous. Because someone should care that you exist. She whispered them again, tasting the ache behind them. No one had ever said that to her. Not her father with his polite affection, not Verena with her cold tolerance. Her father had loved her quietly. Mason had seen her loudly. She looked down at her phone, the glow brushing her face. Mason's last text still waited on the screen. Sleep, Clara. The world won't always be this cruel. She smiled faintly, a trembling smile, the kind that hides a prayer. I wish that were true, she murmured. She didn't know Elena was standing down the hall, outside their mother's room, listening to a conversation that changed everything. Verena's voice, sharp as glass, sliced through the half-open door. I'm tired of her taking up space. It's time she remembered she's not family. No more charity under this roof. Elena's pulse hammered. Not family? Her mother's cruelty wasn't new, but tonight it sounded deliberate, calculated. Elena pressed her hand to her chest. You've done enough damage, Mother, she whispered to herself. Not anymore. The morning sunlight looked like peace, but it was only pretending. Mason waited outside the mansion, leaning against his black car. His sleeves were rolled up, tie gone. He looked less like a billionaire's heir and more like someone who had decided to fight. When Elena appeared, her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed from sleeplessness. Mason, she said quietly. Before you see her, we need to talk. He straightened, instantly alert. What happened? Elena hesitated, glancing back toward the house. Mother knows about you, and Clara. She's furious. She's been watching her through Claudia. They're waiting for an excuse to send her away again. Mason's voice lowered, sharp with disbelief. Send her away. Because she finally feels human? Elena swallowed hard. They don't see her that way. To them, she's a mistake that keeps breathing. He looked at her for a long moment, anger flashing through the calm. Then they'll have to get through me first. Elena's breath caught. Mason, there's more. I think Mother lied about who Clara really is. He turned fully toward her. Explain. I can't. I don't have proof. But every time someone mentions Clara's father, Mother freezes, like she's guarding a secret. Mason's jaw tightened. Then we'll find out what it is. Elena's voice softened. You really care about her, don't you? He looked away, the corner of his mouth twitching. When you meet someone who's been silent all her life and you finally hear her voice, you don't forget that. She deserves more than survival. She deserves freedom. Elena blinked back emotion. You sound like you'd fight the whole world for her. Mason's answer came quiet, sure. Maybe I already am. Up on the balcony, Clara stood half-hidden, her fingers clutching the railing. His words reached her like a heartbeat she didn't know she was missing. Hours later, the house grew still. Too still. Verena called Clara into the sitting room. The air felt colder there, like it belonged to someone else. Verena sat with a cup of untouched tea, her expression carved in porcelain calm. Claudia stood behind her, pretending to be bored. Clara, Verena said smoothly, you've seemed distracted lately. Clara clasped her hands together.
I'm sorry, Mom.
I didn't mean to. Oh, you never do. Verena rose slowly, circling her like a predator tasting patience. You just forget yourself. Forget your place. Clara's voice quivered. I haven't forgotten. Verena's eyes hardened. Don't insult me. I know about the phone and the man who thinks he can play savior. Clara froze. Her heartbeat roared in her ears. Verena leaned in, her smile venom-sweet. You think I'd let some billionaire's son toy with my family name? You are nothing but a mistake we kept out of pity. Each word landed like a blade. Clara blinked hard, fighting tears. If it's pity, then why does my existence bother you so much?
That pierced something.
Verina's face cracked for half a second. Because you remind me of everything I despise, she hissed. The room went silent. Even Claudia hesitated. Mother, Claudia said coolly, maybe we should end this now. Send her away before she embarrasses us again. Clara whispered, please. I haven't done anything wrong. Verina's hand rose, a sharp, deliberate motion. That's enough. The voice came from the doorway. Mason. He stood tall, steady, eyes blazing like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. Verina stiffened. Mr. Hale, this is my house. And yet you run it like a prison, he said, voice low and dangerous. Whatever power you think you have, it ends now. Clara's breath shook. Mason, please don't. He turned to her, his tone gentling like the world had softened just for her. You don't have to keep apologizing for existing. Not to them. Not ever again. Verina laughed, brittle, sharp. Do you even know who she is? That girl isn't what you think. Mason's voice didn't waver. Then tell me who she is. Because all I see is someone you're terrified of. Verina faltered. Claudia's eyes widened. Then Elena appeared behind Mason, her voice breaking through the air. Enough lies, mother. You're not protecting anyone. You're hiding something. Silence. Verina's composure shattered. You have no idea what you're saying. But her trembling hands told another story. Mason turned to Clara, calm but unyielding. Pack your things. You're leaving with me, tonight. She shook her head, terrified. I can't. They'll come after you. Let them, he said simply. I don't run from bullies. Something in her broke open, not in pain, but in release. Elena reached for her, eyes soft. Go, Clara. Don't look back. Clara took one last look at the house, at everything cruel and familiar, and walked toward freedom. They drove for hours in silence, the city lights blurring past like ghosts. Finally, Clara spoke. You shouldn't have done that. They'll hate you for it. Mason glanced at her, voice steady. I don't care if they hate me. I care if you keep living like a prisoner. Tears welled up. Why are you doing this? You barely know me. He pulled the car to the side, engine humming low. His gaze held hers, steady, unguarded. Because I see the way you keep fighting to stay kind in a world that keeps trying to break you, he said quietly. And that is worth everything. She didn't speak, couldn't. The world around her blurred, but his voice anchored her to something real. He turned back to the road. You'll stay at one of my family's guest houses. It's safe. No one will find you there. Mason, I don't want to cause you trouble. He smiled faintly. You already did. But it's the kind I don't mind having. Her laughter slipped out, small, fragile, real. Then his phone buzzed. A message from Ethan flashed on the screen. Be careful, Verina isn't done. Mason's expression darkened. Looks like we're just getting started. Clara turned, fear flickering in her eyes. What do you mean? He didn't look away from the road. Your aunt's hiding something, Clara. Something about your past, and I'm going to find out what it is. The car disappeared into the night, two silhouettes swallowed by darkness, and by fate. Some truths destroy families. Others destroy hearts. But what happens when the truth you've been running from finds you? Speech balloon if this story gripped you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for part 2. The secret that shattered everything is coming soon.
Stay tuned.